members of the Icom team participated in APCO 2023's Food for Thought Luncheon. Our keynote speaker was Amelia Rose Earhart. Her amazing presentation of her own story, her own struggles, and her own accomplishments, the way they tied into a telecommunicator's world, were impressive. A couple of key takeaways that we are going to try to bring back into our own organization are training and dedication are critical to success. Amelia Rose Earhart talked about her struggle to get that training, to achieve that training, and what that did for her.
Was in a brown and white Cessna 172. I'm sure a lot of you in this room were familiar with that plane. It is basically a real basic training aircraft that I had been assigned that day, kind of randomly when I called to make this flight lesson. He was a crotchety old man. He didn't want anything to do with this kid named Amelia Earhart that supposedly wanted to learn to fly, and they would supposedly fly around the world someday, holding on to the dual controls. And we're on that center line. In fact, the center of the room looks like the runway right here. We pushed that throttle forward, and as we held onto the controls together, suddenly his cranky experience and his whole demeanor just kind of disappeared, because the first time that I felt the wheels of that aircraft begin to lift off the runway, and we began to gain altitude over the city where I had been going to school, simply walking between the classrooms and the different buildings. Suddenly I had perspective over Boulder, Colorado.
Additionally, she talked about teamwork. She was criticized for not flying the globe solo. She saw that as more of a challenge and more of a delay. So she compromised her intentions and developed a team to help her. And at the end of the day, she realized that that teamwork allowed for greater personal achievement.
And I know that that may disappoint some of you in this room. I've had a lot of people, especially the boys, no offense, say to me, well, you didn't go solo around the world, Amelia. And I look back and I say, when was your last flight around the world, sir? There is no harm in working as a team. And in fact, the number of hours I would have been required to go solo with that borrowed aircraft through 14 different countries over the course of just 18 days was 8,600 hours in the Pilatus PC-12NG. I would have been in my 60s by the time I qualified to go solo.
And then she talked about how her setbacks, about her identity and her allegations of misleading people could have been a massive setback. But instead for her, there were an opportunity for her to solidify her plan.
And live on national television, I looked at the camera and I said, well, my family is distantly related to Amelia Earhart, and we share a distant common ancestry traced back to the 1700s. I said, but we don't know that exact pinpoint connection of how we're related. And she goes, oh, who cares? We're all related somehow. Best of luck on your journey. We'll be traveling, or we'll be following your flight. And so I floated back to Denver on cloud 9. I was so happy. The interview went so well. But when I landed back at Denver International Airport, I was met with the most extreme turbulence of my life. Not the kind that you experience when you're coming back in over the Rocky Mountains. I experienced turbulence when I turned my phone back on. I was getting messages like this on Twitter. I hope you crash into the ocean and die just like the first Amelia Earhart.
She wrapped things up with saying that we must remain agile in our training and in our dedication to our mission. And we must look for our true north.
So we can handle a lot more of the bumps than we even think we can.
And then she said that we must be a tailwind for somebody else in the organization. If you can be a tailwind, a champion, or an ambassador for somebody within your organization or in your industry, she challenged each one of us in the room, each one of the hundreds of people in this room, to be a tailwind for somebody else in their organization or their industry.
Is to ask yourself, how can you be a tailwind for someone else in this room before you leave Nashville, Tennessee? And the reason a pilot's perspective and a tailwind means so much, to put it into context, you know when you're on a commercial flight and the pilot so proudly announces, we're making it in 25 minutes early to Los Angeles. That's not because they did anything special, it's because they found favorable airspace with a nice strong tailwind, right? A tailwind is free fuel. So I want to ask you, how can you be a tailwind for one another?
And then she said to conclude that it is indeed the human connections that matter.
The people that will come and thank you for doing exactly what you showed up to do. And I will leave you with this. Nobody wants to fly with a pilot who's only been through blue skies. We want to fly with a pilot who has been through some turbulence. Thank you very much for your time.
At Icom, we celebrate our human connections, we celebrate our setbacks, we champion the lessons that we've learned, and we challenge everyone to do a little bit better tomorrow.